have any, do you have any announcements you want to make?
Not many. I think that most people here have already, paid. So thank you. Yep, everyone here. Thank you very much. And, not much is really going on. A lot is going on. A lot is always going on at the L'Chaim Center, but not too many events. We do have a Rosh Chodesh event coming up with very limited space on the 4th of January. It is Dressing Your Truth, and Eve's going to lead it at a private home. So if you're interested, the link will be on today's email, which is coming out soon.
Are there any other classes this week or no?
The only ones that aren't having classes are Hava and Laura, but everybody else has class.
Okay. All right, let's get right to it then. So let's get the sheet on the screen.
I apologize. I didn't save it this time for me, so give me a minute to get it up. We can get started, Allie.
Okay. I will just start by way of a little introduction to our next Mishnah. So we're still, these are still the sayings. They're still the kind of the wisdom of Hillel. And last week we spoke about Hillel and Shammai, who were Chavrutas. They were a learning pair, and to a large degree, they had a tremendous similarity to Moses and Aaron. Aaron was the lawgiver. Moses was the lawgiver. He was entirely responsible for transmitting the Torah from Sinai until to the Jewish people, to lead the Jewish people through the desert. He was responsible for them, whereas Aaron played a much more loving and flexible and relationship-oriented role toward the Jewish people, toward the Bnei Israel. And Hillel and Shammai, to a certain degree, were quite a bit like that. And we spoke about that last week, so we won't get into that for too long. But what I do want to say, and I think this is very important, contrasting last week's Mishnah to this week's Mishnah. Last week's Mishnah was Hillel's wisdom about how to relate to other people. And now what we're going to discover is that he's shifting now to how to relate to ourselves. And they're not one and the same. When it comes to other people, Hillel says, Have mitalmidim shel Aharon, be like the disciples of Aaron. Aaron was the perennial, the quintessential peacemaker. He was always looking for the good in other people, cutting people slack. Or in Hebrew, we'd say, Ohev Shalom. He loved peace. Ohev Shalom, it doesn't just mean he thought peace was great. It meant that peace was his preeminent value, that everything that nothing was more important than reaching a place of peace between people. But Rodev Shalom, he would literally pursue it. Ohev et abrios, he loved people. And the word for people is interesting. It does not say Ohev et anashim. He loved people. It says Ohev et briut, which means he loved God's creations. And I think that really is an important distinction, because a lot of times people behave, I'm sure this happened to you today or yesterday. People behave in ways that drive you crazy. They behave in ways that you find offensive or you're hurt by. And it's easy to kind of write them off or satirize them or objectify them or think or sort of have a narrative about them that you're stuck to. But here in our previous Mishnah, we're really talking about loving the createdness in people, which really means that everyone has a spark of God within them by virtue of being created by God, and everybody has a purpose in this world that's unique to them. So when it says that he loved peace and he pursued peace, it was through loving the kind of createdness in them, that people are created, that they're here for a purpose, that they have absolute worth, even if their behavior isn't necessarily reflected in it, but that there's something absolutely worthwhile that transcends someone's behavior. A person has absolute value. And through seeing people this way, through valuing relationships, through placing, there's a famous saying, I have no idea who said it, which is, it's better to be happy or be in relationship than to be right. In other words, being right isn't the ultimate value. It's better to be in relationship with people. It's better to be in connection with people. And the last words of our last Mishnah is, and draw them close to the Torah. I was speaking to Rebbetzin Lisa Bulow, who you all know, or who most of you know. I had coffee with her yesterday, and she was talking about what she's been trying to do in her organization. And she said, my goal is to make Judaism warm and inspiring. Okay, that's nice. But she didn't stop there. She said, warm enough that people want to stay in it, and inspiring enough that people want to join it. I thought that was a really beautiful way of saying that people come close only when they feel loved and seen and valued and respected. Warm enough that people want to stay in Judaism, and inspiring enough that people want to join. So that really was the model of Aaron and the model of Hillel. That's how Hillel instructs us to relate to other people. But when it comes to relating to ourselves, which is the next Mishnah, I think his perspective is a little at odds with modern sensibilities, which places a tremendous value on self-acceptance, on self-care. And I don't think what he's saying negates those things, but he is telling us, when it comes to our relationship to ourselves, don't make the mistake of being complacent. Don't cut yourself so much slack. Demand things of yourself. The nature of the human being even is to obscure his own faults, to not see or to not hold yourself accountable for the things that you're doing, which you might be very unforgiving if you saw in somebody else. So whereas the school of Hillel tells us, when it comes to other people, warmth and flexibility is the key. When it comes to ourselves, we also have to have a bottom line commitment that we are valuable and intrinsically worthy. And we don't need to punish ourselves, but we cannot be smug. We just can't be smug. We are not, we have to be careful. We have a very limited time on earth. We talk about this all the time. We don't know when that's going to be over. We don't know how much life we're going to have. And it's imperative that we take our lives seriously and we demand things of ourselves. I quoted here Rabbi David Rosenfeld, who wrote, "We weren't put on this earth to sit around smugly. We weren't. I mean, everybody needs to relax and chill out and watch Netflix, but that's not why we're here. We were given a mission down here. We were given a mission. Our neshamas were brought down and enclosed in our bodies and sent into our unique set of circumstances in our lives to fulfill a mission in this world. That means that our challenges to improve our characters, to recognize that the faults that we have aren't just like the unfortunate parts of ourselves, but they're really the challenges that we're given to perfect ourselves, to really be partners with God in our own perfection. We have a job to do. What's our job? Just look at where you're strong and use it, and look at where you're challenged and recognize those are your opportunities to grow. Life is an ongoing struggle. We've got to recognize the struggle at hand and rise to it. If we're not moving forward, we're falling back. So in other words, at the end of the day, even though this is a little simplistic, in a nutshell, what we understand when we compare and contrast these two Mishnahs, one is about our relationship with others and the other is our relationship toward ourselves, while both need to be based in love and respect, we need to cut others probably a lot more slack than we may cut ourselves, which doesn't mean we beat ourselves up, but it does mean, you know what? My life is precious. I don't know how much time I have. The things that I feel are keeping me stagnant, the things that I feel are keeping me from growing, whether it's anger or depression or disorganization or whatever it is, those are actually the things that are those are actually, let's say, the faults or the weaknesses that I'm meant to know that these are my opportunities by design to perfect myself, to work on myself. And life is precious. I got to get moving. I got to get moving. I need to understand what my strengths are and use them. I need to understand what my weaknesses are and seek to improve them, because they're given to me. They're given to me for a reason. My imperfections are there for a reason. Time is not forever. We all know that. So we don't have the same relationship necessarily to others as we do to ourselves. And that's just that's just the beginning of how to look at the difference of these two Mishnahs. Now let's take apart. Sometimes when you read something, it sounds so like scary, like one who doesn't study deserves to die. You sound like very extreme and scary, but don't be scared, because when you really understand and you read it from the inside, you will understand that each of these 3 points are very, very important. So number 1 is there's a flexibility, there's a cutting of slack that I should train myself to give to others, but I need to be a little more exacting with myself, which is usually the opposite of how we behave, which is we get really super frustrated with other people, and then with our own idiosyncrasies and kind of difficult qualities, we tend to overlook them. But in fact, we're encouraged to kind of switch those. And then the first point that he says in relationship to ourselves is really important. And those of you who've been learning know this, but you can never hear it enough. And actually, what's interesting about this Mishnah, which is a little bit unusual, is that it's in Aramaic. So it's not in Hebrew, or it's half in Hebrew. So I'll read it in Aramaic, although I probably won't read it very well. But Hu haya omer, neged shama avad shamei, ulda mosif yusuf, udula yalech kat lachayav, v'diish tamash bataga chalaf. Okay, that is Aramaic. And I don't know why some things are in Aramaic. I think some of the more formal sayings of Pirkei Avot are in Hebrew. And I think maybe, Aramaic was almost like the mama lashon. You know what mama lashon means? It's like the mother tongue. So at that time, Aramaic was the mama lashon, or in Hebrew, it's the sfat em. It's the language it's the mama tongue. It's like what you were raised in, what your mother raised you with. So maybe the reason they're using Aramaic here is he's really talking to himself. We're really talking to ourselves. We're not externally focused here. We're looking at our own self. And the first thing that he says is, one who tries to inflate his reputation loses his reputation. We learn this all the time, but Judaism is just unbelievably passionate about humility, about not seeking to aggrandize our name, which, I mean, I don't know how they would have understood the times we live in, but we are really supposed to train ourselves to run from honor, which for some people is just not hard. Some people it's not like, there's a kind of Hebrew Yiddish word taiva. It's like, it's Hebrew, but it's sort of said in a Yiddishy way, which is like, it's not my taiva. My taiva is like, that's not my fish to fry. That's not my challenge. For some people, it's a massive challenge. People want honor. They're constantly seeking it, or they sometimes, in an effort to not seek it, they're still seeking it. There's the famous story, we've told it so many times, but it's so beautiful, which is about the man who struggled with just needing honor. And he said to his rabbi, Rabbi, I've been learning from you for so long about running away from honor. And I'm doing it. I'm running away from honor. I'm not asking anyone to honor me. I'm running away. Why isn't anybody honoring me? You said that I'll really be honored if I stop looking for it. And the rabbi said, that's because when you're running away from it, you're looking over your shoulder. You're kind of hoping that if I don't seek it, I'll get it. But we really, really are actually supposed to wean ourselves from wanting it. And ultimately the goal is to do the right thing, to do the high thing, to do the honorable thing, lishma, for the sake of it, because it's the right thing to do, because it's the right thing to do in relationship to God and to our fellow man. Now, the outcome of being a great person is that people tend to honor you, but that's not why you do it. So for those who don't really struggle with this, it's not such a terrible challenge, but even if you don't perceive that you struggle with it, pay attention to the desire for honor. Honor is one of the three things that Pirkei Avot tells us takes us out of the world, meaning the more you want it, the less you're in your world. The more you're looking for it, the less you're in your current reality. It's part of the reason that kids, now we have all these new studies, really they just blew up for interesting reasons. There's all these unbelievable studies about mental health and kids and social media. It's a big thing now. There was a whistleblower from Facebook, and as a outcome of that, some really unbelievable studies especially about girls and mental health. But really, when you think about the nature of social media, which is you're constantly looking for people to approve you, to like you, to give you the thumbs up, to see you. But if you're looking for that, you're not in your life. You're not experiencing pleasure in your own life. You're always looking outside of it, and you can't fill the hole. And that leads to an unbelievable amount of mental health issues and anxiety because you can't fill it. So we're strongly encouraged to do the right thing because it's right. And at the end of the day, that true worth will make itself known and people will respect you. But we do it because it's the godly thing to do. It's the good thing to do. We also don't seek honor because we kind of understand our role vis-a-vis our Creator, that the things that we have are not because we're so fabulous, but because they were gifted to us, because it's all a gift, our abilities. And yes, we try, but ultimately our abilities are God-given. And there's a story that I think is a beautiful story about a king who desperately wanted to kind of feel what a common man would feel. So he dressed as a foot soldier, and an officer kind of led him through guided him through the streets with their around the common man. And so the officer looked like the superior and the king looked like the foot soldier. So everybody around the officer were giving the officer a lot of kavod, a lot of honor. And the foot soldier, they were totally ignoring, not knowing that it was the king. And the officer is getting more and more uncomfortable. And finally he says, I can't stand this. I can't stand the attention. I can't stand the honor that I'm getting. If people understood who I was with, they wouldn't give me any of the honor. They would give him the honor, but they don't know it's him. I'm so uncomfortable. And that is a metaphor for us. To a large degree, God is the king. And we are, and he's dressed as a foot soldier in the sense that he's invisible. He's not perceived. And so when we get all the honor, we ultimately want to get to a place in our own lives where we could say, I don't want this. God deserves the honor, not me. So to a certain degree, when we're honor seeking, and to a large degree, we really don't understand that, where we stand vis-a-vis God, that the honor goes to God, and we are his servant. And so the bottom line is, the more you pursue it, the more you lose it. Or conversely, the more you lose your desire for your reputation, for your name, for your honor, the more you ultimately receive it. Honor seeking is one of the things that takes us out of the world. So again, when we begin with the idea of flexible toward other people, cutting slack toward other people, when it comes to us, with respect toward ourselves, be more exacting, demand more from yourself. Number one, the more you try to inflate yourself, the more you lose yourself. That's number one. And then we have the second piece of wisdom from Hillel. One who does not increase, here, Julie, if you go down, one who does not increase knowledge. Knowledge is would be in parentheses, because it's not said here. He who does not increase decreases. This is a really important point. One is, don't pursue honor. The more you pursue it, the less you have it. And number two is something very interesting, which is, you're either going forward in life or you're going backward, but you're never standing still. And I, at first I didn't totally understand this. Like, well, what if you just are kind of in a rut and not doing much of anything and status quo? But here the sages tell us, or Hillel tells us, if you're not increasing, if you're not consciously growing, you are consciously retreating, you're losing ground. There's no such thing as just staying kind of stuck. And of course, we know this in the context of human development, that if a child is 2 years old, we applaud them for certain things that they do behaviorally, that if they're still doing them when they're 12 years old, we'd be super concerned about them, because a human being's development should be in step with their age. So the same thing is true with us. As we get older and as we move through our lives, our wisdom, our pursuit of knowledge, our personal growth needs to be in step with our as we grow and as we get older. So we can't just coast. This is really like a warning. And with COVID, it's been like kind of 2 years of like amorphous time, but we really have to prevent ourselves from coasting. We have to think about our days and structure our days in such a way that we're doing something that's moving us forward in our relationships, in our spiritual growth, in our personal growth, in our Torah knowledge. We just can't remain the same. It's like an escalator. You're either going up or you're down. So the second point that Hillel is making here is, the more you grow, the more you study, the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you understand yourself, then the more obligated you are to advance. So the greater you are, the more is demanded of you. But if you prevent yourself from learning, then you're going down. So we can go up or we can go down, but we can never remain the same. So even, I think, I want to open it up to the group a little bit earlier today, but even to ask ourselves every day, like, what's one thing I could do? I remember when Eve was teaching the class on giving the benefit of the doubt, And she said a little piece of advice of waking up in the morning and saying, whom could I give the benefit of the doubt to today? You know, one person that you're critical of, what's one person a day that I could give the benefit of the doubt to? The idea is that I cannot just be the same person today that I was yesterday. And that can be solved really with like a little structure of like starting your day with, like, to Eve's point, who's one person I can give the benefit of the doubt to today? What's one act of kindness I could do today? Just infusing your life with a structure, with some sort of structure that keeps you in growth mode, so that when you go to bed at night, you can say, I'm not the same person today that I was yesterday. He who does not increase, it does not say just stays the same Joe Schmo, stays the same. No, it doesn't. It says the person who doesn't grow shrinks, actually retreats. That's something to keep in mind. Okay, now we're going to move to the next point, which sounds very extreme, but again, we have to understand it in its context. Okay, so this is in Aramaic, which I don't know. So I don't know exactly what that means, because I don't know Aramaic, but he who doesn't learn, okay, I don't know if this exactly means, chayev means is obligated, and katla, I mean, I don't know what it means. He who does not learn deserves death? Huh? Like, what does that mean? So I thought a lot about this, and I on one end, I understand that we're if you go back to the previous Mishnah and you go back to the whole concept that Hillel's love for people, or from the school of Aaron, what Aaron taught us, is to love people because people are created, because people have an inherent worth by virtue of being created in the image of God, that nobody doesn't have a God, you can lose it by virtue of your horrible behavior, but most people, they still have the spark of God in them. So loving people is dependent on seeing that. But again, going back to the beginning of the Mishnah, with ourselves, we need to be more exacting. Okay, if you shift the language here a little bit, I love people because, like, bottom line, my respect for people, I have a love for them that's independent of their behavior, because they're created in the image of God. I too am created in the image of God, but I recognize that my life is a gift. And if I'm not using my life in the way that the manufacturer manufactured me with the intention of using it for, then do I deserve life? In other words, I'm created with a purpose. If I'm not living according to that purpose, then do I deserve life in the absolute sense of the word? And we have, in Hebrew, there are categories of a physical existence. At the very bottom of the pyramid is domem. Domem means without any life, a rock without any life or locution or anything in it. Domem means inanimate. It's an inanimate, it's a rock, let's say. There's domem. I guess you could say it's the earth. It's the inanimate. And then next in the pyramid comes somach, semach. Semach means plant life. It means all vegetation and all things that have an aspect of life in them, but not a soul, not something that makes them like absolutely alive. Of course, we know photosynthesis rather than, we know that like the whole process is different of tzomech. But tzemach is alive, but doesn't have spirit in it. So we have the inanimate, then we have plant life, and then we have chai above tzomech on the pyramid. Chai is animal life. Animal life has nefesh. It has kind of like an animal soul. It has liveliness. It's alive, but it's not fully. It doesn't have the mind in the same way as it doesn't have free choice. It doesn't have speech. It can't express itself in the same way. And then we have at the pinnacle of creation, we have the medaber. Medaber means the speaker. It means the human being who can use their free choice to choose good, to avoid evil, to make choices that get them closer to other people and to God. Domem, somech, chai, medaber. And what we understand from each of these levels is that somech, plant life, draws its existence through earth, through domem. Therefore, domem gets its raison d'etre, fulfills its purpose, elevates itself, and fulfills its purpose through bringing life to the rung above it, through bringing life to tzemach, to tzomech. And in turn, tzomech, plant life, draws its vitality, fulfills its purpose by giving life and allowing for the existence of the animal world. So the whole purpose of domem is to give life and existence to the next rung. The whole purpose of tzomech is to give life and existence to the next rung. And then the whole purpose of the animal world is to give life and to give existence to the medaber, that the human being can use the animal for food and clothing and shelter and all things. Now here's the point here. If the medaber, which is you and me, if the medaber doesn't understand that it fulfills its purpose and draws its vitality by connecting to what's above it, then the reason for that level of creation is in question. So if the medaber does not understand that there's something above him, something above her, to which she's meant to connect through their deeds, through their kindness, through their mitzvot, through their growth, connect to the source of all of creation, then it's questionable whether it should be in existence at all. And that's what it means, deserves death. It doesn't mean that if you're not growing, you should die. It means that your very existence, if you don't understand that life, that I guess you could say that life exists in this sort of pyramid-like structure where every rung kind of justifies its existence by feeding into and allowing for the existence of the rung above it. So here's what Rabbi Bunim from Ethics from Sinai, which is a beautiful book on Pirkei Avot, this is what he's saying. He says here, the proper being of each level of existence consists of fulfilling its function in the total scheme of creation by serving the rung above. The relationship between each form and the one above it on the pyramid is actually one of service. That our greatness comes from our service of the rung above it. The proper being of each level of existence consists of fulfilling its function in the total scheme of creation by serving the rung above, by participating, so to speak, in the life of the higher form. Each level of existence, as it were, elevates its own nature and then realizes its full potentiality. In other words, by serving the one above it. and participating in the life of the one above it, that then each level elevates their own nature and realizes its full potential. Now, man too has a life purpose, to serve a higher level of existence, to perform the will of the Almighty through learning and doing. If a human being subverts his own purpose and neglects his distinctively human obligations, he has sunk to the rung of the animal beneath him. He should surely lose, I don't know, surely, but this, I didn't write this. He in some ways could potentially or surely lose the right to utilize the animal life if he is on its level, which is very interesting. There's a verse in the Talmud, and I'm going to misquote it, but it says something like, an Am Ha'aretz should not eat meat. An Am Ha'aretz is somebody who doesn't understand what their own purpose is as a human being. And it says they shouldn't eat meat. It's somewhere in the Talmud. And now we understand why it's saying that, because it's almost like you don't deserve it. You deserve to eat the animal who you deserve to eat the animal when you are playing your role in the rung higher than you. So he should surely lose the right to utilize the animal if he's on its level. He has therefore forfeited the privilege to be served by the lower forms of life. So we're going to open it up in a minute. We're going to get through this and then we're going to open it up. But it is something really to understand that in this pyramid of creation that we can only realize its full potential when we know what's above us. And we're the only ones out of Domem, Tzomeach, Chai, and Medaber. We're the only ones who are gifted with the free choice ability to choose whether we're going to understand what's above us and understand that our full potentiality can be realized only when we know it and we materialize it through learning and doing. And last, and then we're going to open it up. And last is, he who exploits the crown of Torah shall perish. So what does that mean? It's also very intense. These are negative. These are intense. These are not phrased in a touchy-feely way. The first thing is, a name made great is a name destroyed. Okay, which is again, being exacting with this. Every time I search for honor, I'm looking for honor. I'm actually losing honor. He who does not increase decreases. If I'm not actively growing, if I'm not structuring my day in such a way that I'm moving forward, that I'm actually moving back. He who does not learn or grow deserves to die. If I don't understand my role in this pyramid of life, then it's questionable whether my existence is truly even justified. And he who makes worldly use of the crown of Torah shall perish. What that really means is that I'm not sure how relevant this is to us, but certainly the Torah can be misused. People can use it for power. They can use it, to take advantage of other people. They can use the power of the Torah to and use it in totally wrong ways, which is why I think that the use of the word hatchet is interesting, because we know we don't dig with a hatchet. Do not use the Torah as a hatchet with which to dig. And that's the same thing. Don't use your Torah knowledge as a tool to hurt other people, as a tool to exploit. If you have a powerful Torah position, don't take advantage of other people through it. And this was incredibly relevant in the times of Hillel and Shammai, because the destruction of Jerusalem, here we have in the Pesikta de Rav Kahana, the destruction of Jerusalem, which means the destruction of the first temple and the second temple, is attributed to this kind of abuse. The people manipulated the Torah for their own purposes. They corrupted the law to fit their own personal needs. They decided cases to their own advantage. Do not use the Torah as a hatchet to which to dig. The Torah is powerful. Use it for the good. Don't use it for negative personal gains. so we'll just end with Rabbi Irving Greenberg's point, and then we'll open it up to the group. The behaviors listed in the Mishnah, these 4 points, they're all paradoxical. They all have an effect that's paradoxical. If you look at each one, which is phrased in the negative, you'll understand that each one is, in essence, has a paradoxical effect. They evoke an opposite reaction to the intention of the actor. In other words, when a person, hold on, I got to go back to it. When a person does these things, he gets or receives ultimately the very opposite of what he supposedly wants. When a person acts in a way that, like, trying to get the attention on themselves to get all the honor, they lose their name. When a person just wants to just be status quo, they fall backwards. When a person doesn't realize their place in creation, their existence is questionable. When a person kind of uses their knowledge or uses their power to hurt other people, they lose their power. So in this case, they evoke an opposite reaction to the intention of the actor. I want one thing and I'm actually getting the other. In this case, instead of high achievement in the Torah leading to increased respect and deeper life, the exploitation of high standing in Torah leads to loss of reputation and diminished life in status or in quality of life. In a sense, he perishes. So if we just to end, if we want to just switch this all and phrase it positively, be humble, be much more focused on the honor of other people than your own honor. Always be growing. It doesn't matter if it's something tiny, but just organize your day and your mind so that you do one growth-oriented thing a day, whether it's giving someone a compliment or making a phone call to somebody every day, or giving in some way, or giving someone the benefit of the doubt, or learning a piece of Torah every day. Make sure you're constantly growing. Recognize that you draw, this is a little bit more theoretical, that you draw your very legitimacy in life, your legitimacy in as a medaber, as a living human being. Your life is justified through understanding that you're in relationship with God. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means keep moving forward, because and remember that every rung draws its legitimacy and its vitality by serving the rung above it. And and that's why we say that an evil person should not eat meat. I don't know if that's literal, but it's because if he abused the rung above him, then he doesn't deserve to be served by the rung below him. And he makes worldly use of the crown of Torah perishes, which is everything you learn spiritually, use it to build, use it to connect, use it to deepen. If you're ever using it for negative reasons in any way, then there's an aspect of perishing. So always make sure you use what you learn for the good. So that's sort of like positive ways to phrase these 4 sort of paradoxical behaviors that Hillel lists. Again, ending with what we began with, which is we should love ourselves, but this modern idea of, just like, I don't know, just maybe kind of like it's all about self-acceptance. That's true at a basic level, but we need to be exacting with ourselves. We actually need to push ourselves to grow. And we don't know when we're going to die. So there is an urgency. But that sort of urgency and that sort of demandingness, we should not put on other people. That's their fish to fry. And that's the kind of comparing that's sort of the contrast of these two Mishnahs. Okay, so I spoke. Let's open it up to the group and hear what anybody has to say about any of these 4 points. Or anything at all. Who do we have? Oh, hi, Leslie.
Hello. Hello. So something that I struggle with, and I think you and I talked about this years ago, is that first statement about not seeking honor, because not everyone here, most people here, I don't know personally, but I have my own law firm of all women that I've built over many years, and does some pretty special things for women and whatever. And if I don't seek the honors, if I don't put myself out there, if I don't, like market myself in the firm and the good things that we do, we won't survive. We won't get business. And I know it's such a totally different context is like business from the Torah and from personal.
No, I don't think so.
You don't? Okay. So I struggle with that. I don't want to like say, oh, I'm so great, look what I've done. But at the same time, if I don't, then where does that leave me business wise?
Right. Like, where does humility get in your way of advancement? When is humility foolish or is that right? Like, when am I being?
Yeah. When am I breaching that by seeking honor and not being humble? When it's all really what I'm doing, like, yes, it is to make a living, but so much of it is to fulfill my vision of being able to give women a place to practice law in a, in a incredible way where they can, whatever, I'm not going to go into all that, but there's an honorable vision behind it. But yeah, that's the dilemma.
What do people think about that? It's an interesting dilemma. I'm sure there's some wisdom about that.
I think I'm just talking and you don't even see my picture, but I think in the whole world of business and what you're doing, Leslie, is amazing. And I think that there's a whole industry called PR and public relations that's built on seeking honor for companies for what they do and what they do well. And I personally think that should happen, that you need it to happen. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have Linda and Stephen. Yeah.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Well, Leslie, I'm wondering if this is a real world problem or if this is just something that you're thinking about because we're discussing it today in class.
It's actually both. I have this real inner struggle about, like, I have attained a bunch of honors and praise, and I'm very uncomfortable about it. It makes me very uncomfortable. So part of it makes me so proud, and part of it makes me very, very uncomfortable. And so it's just an interesting, because we're talking about in relationship to ourselves today versus other people. That's what brought it up. And it's a whole thing with, like, I've gone through leadership training and people say, like, you have to lead, like, these people on your team want to be led. And I'm like, but they're incredible. I'm not better than they are. So I feel very uncomfortable about leading. I feel very uncomfortable when I'm given awards. Like, it's a, and I don't know if it's a woman thing. And I'm just thinking, yeah. And it is a day-to-day struggle, but it's also definitely raised by, because I know in Judaism, you're not supposed to seek honor and stand out and do what you do in order to be honored by other people. And it's a dilemma.
Well, I think you just answered your own question. I want other people. I think you just answered your own question. The last thing you just said was the answer. I think you're not supposed to do things in order to get the honor. right? Donna, yeah, Donna and Linda, yeah.
Thank you. I was just gonna share that, I feel like I hear the conflict, I hear, but I also feel that it's God's giving you these abilities and these gifts to make a difference and move through life. And I feel like there's a lot of, it's about intention, right? So
Yeah.
maybe you're not as comfortable with the accolades or the acknowledge, that's okay. You just kind of can move through it in a way of bringing the good with you and bringing your abilities and your message forward. And then that goes as far as, being a role model for your family and children. I don't know your story, but, different things as we go forward and making a difference in women's lives or for the woman or for your particular calling. And yet it's taking God's work through you and with you, with your intention of doing what, well for others as well as yourself. And I get that struggle, but no buts. I just feel like that's kind of we're humans and we're just working through this, human life, right? Part of it.
So you're talking about intention. You're talking about the
Yes.
importance of what's behind, what's motivating you, what intention you have. Okay, Linda. Thank you, Donna.
First of all, hey neighbor, hi everybody. Leslie and I live just down the street from each other, and I never knew this is the first time that I've been on Zoom with her in the Chaim Center at the same time. So this is a pleasure, not just to be with all of you and with her as well. I agree with what people are saying and what Ali is suggesting, that it's the intention behind what you're doing. It's the intention that giving women a chance to practice their craft in the full bloom as that they possibly can. And as opposed to saying, gee, Leslie Cohn, I'm super duper and look what I'm doing. All the accolades will follow what you're doing. But it's not, as we're discussing, it's not like you're seeking them and then doing the action.
It's all intent. So that's what I'm getting from the group. The power, Leslie's intention is the key here. Does she intend to do good, and through doing good, she's getting the honor, or is she driven by the honor? And I think Leslie, that you're driven by the good.
Yeah.
So, or maybe you're struggling with sometimes the honor, which would make you very, very human. But I hear that the group is really focused on this key word of intention, or in Hebrew we call intention kavanas, which is from the word kivun, which is the direction. So if the direction is always toward doing the right thing, doing the good thing, doing the thing that's helps women lawyers, it's always toward in the direction of the good action, then what happens through it is what might have to happen through it to move the company forward. But it's all about the kivun or the kavanah or the intention or the direction of what's driving you. Now, if you find that you're in that sort of like needy, wanting more, those are the things that Hillel is saying here that you need to struggle with. I don't think he's saying, don't make he himself made an enormous difference in the world and had endless accolades. Hillel was beloved by all, everybody. He was absolutely beloved. He was the leader of the Jewish people. So it was all about the kivun, the direction, what was driving him. But to say that he prevented himself from leading the people because of a mistaken sense of humility, no. So that, I think everybody's comments are very important here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Nice to see you too, Linda. And I guess when I think of like I'm nowhere near what you do, Ali, for people, and you do what you do, and we all you've changed all of our lives, and we tell you that all the time. And I don't know if that's a struggle for you to know. I hope not. So just
I'm not hearing as much. I'm not hearing as much anymore. It is wrong. Who else? And anyone else? Yes, Stephen. Or Adrian, who was talking?
I have another question. I'm not ready to leave Linda yet, if that's okay. Linda, you said that you're having some problems accepting the accolades, but you also said you're having a problem.
Leslie.
I'm sorry, Leslie. I got the L right. you said you're having some problems with the accolades, but you also said you're having a problem, with leadership, and those two are not the same. I'm wondering if the problem stems from the same source or if it's something else.
I don't know. I'll ask my therapist.
Okay.
But no, it's a good question.
Mhm.
But you're obviously doing a good job in leadership because you're getting the accolades.
Well, thank you. What I was told is you can lead in, I do have an executive coach for this, and I was told you can lead in a way that isn't putting yourself above people, but by saying
Mhm.
like, we're in this together.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think it's just all about this, like being uncomfortable, being like revered by the people who work for me, by client, like it's very,
Mhm.
very uncomfortable. And yet
Mhm.
everything I do, leads to that. And then I'm like, why did it's because I do good thing. I know that, but it's just this, I think when you study Torah for all these years, and it just, this humility thing is supposed to be there. And then when people recognize you, it doesn't feel comfortable. Maybe that's a woman thing. Maybe that's a Torah study thing. Maybe that's I don't know, but
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
don't want to
Linda.
stop everybody's conversation. So
No, I think it's very interesting for people. Yeah, Linda.
No, I have a question about what Leslie is raising. When the few times, a very few that I've watched sporting events and athletes getting awards for being cited as the most valuable player, often in the interviews I hear, I'll have to say often because I don't watch everything, I don't pay attention to everything with this stuff. Often I hear that I could never have done it alone. It's only with the help of the teammates. It's only been the help of the coach that we have been translating from the himself to the team, that we were able to do what we were able to do. And for that, I'm very grateful. So I'm just wondering is there an obligation or a remedy for discomfort when a person takes advantage of an opportunity to help others and does it to help others and then receives the accolades like what Leslie is receiving or what prime athletes receive? Is there any sort of obligation to recognize team effort or whatever endowments people have received and taken advantage of to provide the service that they performed?
You're asking, is there an obligation to
Well, number
thank
one,
and acknowledge?
I'm sorry.
Is that what you're asking? Like, do we have an obligation to thank, to acknowledge?
be
Yeah,
humble about it.
yeah. In other words, spread the credit where it's due.
Yep. Yes, the answer is yes. Unequivocally.
And then how far does one
Keep-
go? Does one go to the tangible people or intangible ancestors that one can cite to? Does one go further and perhaps go into a religious realm that could make other people tune out and not recognize the human efforts to make whatever happen and just be quiet about any religious or spiritual component?
I think that you what you say publicly, you have to be aware of how much people can hear, and that's the emotional intelligence of knowing what people can hear and when it's enough. But in terms of who we are as people, even our very name, Yehudim, Jewish, is from the word Yehuda, which is from the word lahodot, which means two things. It means todah, to thank, and it means lahodot, to acknowledge. So the idea that happiness and the best kind of life is about thanking, taking nothing for granted, recognizing it's all a gift, nothing is yours by right, and acknowledging, going back and acknowledging what had to happen in order to bring you to this point until you reach the core of what brings things into existence, which is God himself. So it is a very spiritual and religious. Thanking and acknowledging is deeply spiritual and religious. What you say in front of people, I think that's about emotional intelligence and knowing when, and when you've said enough and when it's time to social intelligence, when it's, when how much you can say or before people tune out. But in terms of your life, the value of your life is totally dependent on thanking and acknowledging. Totally. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has anything to say about that.
I'll say something, Nadine.
Right, Nadine?
It's all, this all the time because I watch a lot of sports and I love those awards. And it's always first and foremost, always thanking their Lord and always thanking their mother. It's always, always 9 out of 10. I mean, because I hear this and I watch this and I realize how important their religion is to them, just as our religion is to us. And after their mother, it's always
That's interesting.
in that order.
Yep, that makes sense. Anyone else?
I hate to dominate and then leave, but I have to go back to work. But thank you.
I was so
all
glad
for
you were here.
everything.
That was interesting what you brought up, Leslie. Thank you for bringing it up.
All right. Thank you so much. See you next
He's
week.
leading those women.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kala kavod. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful week.
Bye,
Sending love
Al.
to all. Mwah. Much love to everybody.
Stay well. It's
Yeah, be well,
Thank you.
everybody. Happy New
Thank you,
Year.
everybody.
Bye.
Great to see